afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the Pearly Health Center of Excellence webinar series. My name is Cassandra Boucher, and I'm the Project Manager of Corporate Planning and Implementation at Pearly Health. Pearly Health is a unique and innovative campus of care, home to more than 600 seniors and veterans living in independent apartments or receiving long-term care. Pearly Health is also a center for research, education, and clinical and therapeutic services. The Pearly Health Center of Excellence leads and participates in innovative initiatives, research, and knowledge translation activities that help advance quality of care for older adults living with frailty. Before I introduce our speakers for today, I want to let people know that there will be time at the end of the presentation for questions, and you can do so by writing them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. So feel free to enter your question at any point. We also ask that you take a minute or two at the end to complete the short survey that will appear on your screen when you exit the webinar. So we are very fortunate to host Kathy Knight Robinson, Director of Early Learning and Care Programs at Andrew Fleck Children's Services, Jose Alejandro Fernandez Cruz, Intergenerational Program Coordinator with Andrew Fleck Children's Services, Dr. Annie Robitaille, Associate Professor at the University of Ottawa and Commissioner's Auto Research Chair with the Center of Excellence in Frailty-Informed Care, and Mehwish Syed, undergraduate student completing an honors Bachelor of Health Sciences with a population and public health specialization with the University of Ottawa. So without further ado, please welcome Kathy and Jose.
Thanks, Cassandra. Next slide, please. So Andrew Fleck Children's Services is a multi-service family serving agency and one of the biggest in Ottawa. We currently operate 18 plus childcare centers across the city. We also have a group that licenses home childcare and provides them with consultation and advice. We operate an early on and family support center and children's inclusion support services, which works with childcare centers to allow children with exceptionalities to take part in day-to-day activities to the fullest of their capacity. And we're in the process of licensing childcare services in 6 different women's shelters across the city. And our specialized programs are our intergenerational program, the Engage at Every Age project, our Forest and Nature School, and our nursery school programs. And we have programs located in various different spaces, either that buildings that we own or that we lease, and spaces from churches, residences, government offices, workplaces, and mixed-use spaces. Next slide, please. And so for our vision of intergenerational programming, we wanted to go one step further than the regularly seen intergenerational program across Canada, which involves children going to see older adults in a long-term care home for 1 to 2 hour visits once a month, where they do very structured activities and then don't see each other for a prolonged period of time. What we wanted to do was embed the interactions between the young and the old in the day-to-day programming and create spaces where older adults are welcome to come and participate with the children based on their energy level and their interests as often as possible. Because we believe that children and older adults both benefit holistically from their shared interactions. And so through this project, Engage at Every Age, we're working to create demonstration sites that act as community hubs for intergenerational connections that then gradually build into meaningful ties between the young and the old. And we believe that these community hubs and these relationships that we're forming will build a catalyst for longer term sustainable development within the community. Next slide, please. And we've seen numerous benefits across the board for the children, the older adults, and the people involved of all ages, be those parents or the staff in the program. For children, we see a lot of healthier brain development, especially through there being more older adults in the program that they can talk to, that can serve as scaffolds for development through serve and return interactions, as well as a lot of social emotional development that helps them develop patience, empathy, a greater understanding of the needs of others, and behavioral modeling in several different activities. And then for older adults, there's this imbued sense of purpose that improves the quality of life, a decrease in social isolation, a greater feeling of self-worth as they're passing on a lifetime of knowledge and skills to the next generation, as well as a stimulus to engage in physical activities. And then for people of all ages, it reduces their very ageist perspectives, both for older adults and children, regarding their limitations and capacities. We see improvements in the way that we perceive changes over a lifetime in terms of cognitive development, physical ability, and there's a greater sense of belonging for being part of a community where there's people of all ages, as well as a greater level of acceptance for people from different backgrounds and different cultures. Next slide, please. Because as Margaret Mead, a very famous pedagogue, put it, connections between generations are essential for the mental health and stability of a nation. And here we have some snapshots of some of the interactions we've seen at one of our other demonstration sites between the young and the old. Next slide, please.
So for the purpose of this presentation, I'm going to focus a little bit on the Early On Child and Family Center, because that is what we want to share today is the partnership with the Pearly that we have with the Early On Child and Family Center. So what is an Early On Child and Family Center? Simply put, it's a place for families. It's a place for families to come and meet other children, meet other families. It's a place to learn and be as a community. It's also a place for parents to find support, whether it's with our early childhood educators that can provide child development information, resources, but it's also a place where they can also connect with other families and create their own network of support. It's also a place where we really want families and children to meet their full potential. And so we provide some wraparound services, some support, some information for them to be able to do that. And of course, we have lots of information resources that they can pull from. What's also important to know about an Early On Child and Family Center is that they are all over the province of Ontario. I believe there's 81 of them currently, and they are free to any residents of Ontario. So the purpose of them is to make them really accessible to everyone, regardless of socioeconomic demographics. So if we can move on to the next slide, I can share a little bit more about what happens at an Early On Child and Family Center. So our most popular programs are our drop-in play groups. So drop-in play groups are places where children and families can come and meet at any time they wake up in the morning and they feel like they want to connect with other children, other families. They can come in, spend some time with us. They can come and go as they please. We also offer adult and child workshops. So for families to create opportunities, such as the picture that we have where families can explore with their children. We offer virtual parent discussions, special events in the communities. We participate in community barbecues, story walks with our library. We provide a lot of resources on social media as well, because our families often that's where they get some of their information. Weekly newsletters and monthly calendars of what's happening, not only just at our centers and our programs, but also throughout the community that could be of interest to families who have children between the ages of 0 to 6. We support families with some referrals as well if they need some additional support for their child or for their family, whether that's with housing, with referrals to specialists. We offer a toy lending and book library for children, and we also have some parenting books as well. We do a lot of collaboration opportunities for projects and research in the early years, and that's sort of what led us to have this great opportunity with Pearly Health. And we continue to create those community partnerships. In our programs, you will see lots of students and volunteers also supporting the family, because we truly believe in that community model, where that is where families get their support. And of course, one-on-one parent support. So next slide, please. So for the purpose of this workshop, we really wanted to talk about the opportunity that Pearly Health and Andrew Fleck took to bring multiple generations together. So we created a partnership where we offer one of our play groups within Pearly Health facilities. And so we have children and families coming to play in the facility, where also the older adults that are living at the Pearly can also join in those times and participate in some play, or maybe just kind of, have an opportunity to watch. They can get involved as much or as little as they wanted to. It does allow them to contribute together on special activities. And obviously, this takes a lot of ongoing collaboration to ensure that we meet the needs both of the families and children, but also of the older adults. Because even though a lot of the needs are similar, there's often different accommodations that need to be put in place. And we truly feel, as Jose mentioned earlier in the previous slide, that there is benefits for both young and old in these interactions and connections. We really do feel that relationships are being built that may not have happened if this wasn't an opportunity that was presented to them. And of course, like any new innovative project, there's lots of trial and error and shifting and tweaking that needed to happen. And I believe that Mehwish is going to speak more about that. So I'll pass it on to you for the next slide.
Hello, everybody. My name is Mehwish, and I'm delighted to share the results of my honors thesis project, which I completed under the supervision with Annie. Our research focused was on exploring the impact of an intergenerational early on program, a subject that holds significant potential for fostering connections and understanding between different age groups. Today, I will be presenting our findings and discussing the outcome of this program evaluation, highlighting its implications and benefits for both younger and older participants. Next slide. So the research objective explores and evaluates the experiences of participants involved in the intergenerational program, so including their satisfaction with the program, reported benefits, encountered barriers, and some areas of improvement. Next slide. The Intergenerational Early On program is a collaboration between Pearly Health and Andrew Flake Children's Services. The 6-week program features weekly 2-hour sessions where participants engage in activities such as puppet play, puzzles, coloring, building with block. Each session concludes with a sing-along during circle time. Following the 6 sessions, participants such as parents, facilitators, volunteers, tenants, and residents were asked to complete a survey aimed to evaluate the impact of the program. Next slide. So in terms of my methods, with our data collection, surveys were administered after each 6 weeks. So we had from round 1 to round 4 between April 2023 till November 2023. And in terms of our data analysis, descriptive analysis were conducted on closed-ended questions using SPSS, while the data from open-ended questions were coded and themed using thematic analysis process. Next slide, please. So we had quite an impressive level of participation throughout the rounds, as we can see over here. We had a total of 47 surveys completed. These surveys provided valuable insights from individuals involved in the program. So we had residents, we had tenants, parents, volunteers, and facilitators. Next slide. In terms of the participants' profile, I categorize the data into 3 different groups to assess their demographics. So as I mentioned previously, we had volunteers, facilitators, parents, residents, and tenants. So for the volunteers and facilitator, we had a total of 5 surveys completed from them. And the majority participants were female, identified with 80% of the group with the average age of 50. Next, for parents, we had 17 surveys completed from them. And again, the majority of the participants were female with the percentage of 82.4 with the average age of 33. Next, for residents and tenants, we had 25 surveys completed from them. And in terms of the gender, it was a bit more equal this time, with 58% being female with the average age of 86. Next slide. So I want to start by talking about some of the challenges and barriers encountered by participants. However, before I go into this, I do want to mention that the majority of the participants really enjoyed and liked the program, and we only had like a few participants who encountered minor challenges. So for the volunteers and facilitators, only 3 out of 5 respondents encountered challenges, primarily identifying inconsistent attendance from participants. For parents, we only had 2 out of 17 who encountered challenges, indicating that the timing of the program was inconvenient as it was impeding with their kids' nap time. Next, for residents and tenants, we had 5 out of 25 respondents who encountered challenges, and their main concern were children climbing on tiers, which raised safety concern for the kids, but also themselves, as well as they also mentioned about hearing impairment and limited mobility, which made their interaction difficult with the younger kids. Next slide. So I want to talk about this other thing that we asked in our survey was, did the program meet your expectations? So for parents, only 1 of them reported that it did not meet their expectation because they felt like that some of the residents and tenants were not fully engaging with their kids. However, 15 reported that it did meet their expectations, highlighting the enjoyable time spent with their kids. So for example, as we can see over in the slide, one of the parents mentioned, how their child was exploring circle time while they used to refuse to do it before. And the other parent mentioned, how it gives their child the opportunity to interact with residents, and it helps her become more independent around individuals of different ages. Next, for residents and tenants, 20 of the residents and tenants indicated that it did meet their expectations, enjoying their time, engaging with kids, and also witnessing their happiness. However, we did have 4 residents and tenants reported that it did not meet their expectations. And some of the things that they mentioned was that they had the desire for more interaction with older kids. The other thing that they mentioned was that they felt like that the children did not seek their assistance in the presence of volunteers, facilitators, and parents. Next slide. So one of the key areas we aimed to explore in the survey was program evaluation, as this is, it was program improvement, as this is a program evaluation. So in terms of program improvement, we identified 3 main themes. The first one being program timing, the second one being interactive activities and interactions, and the third one being increasing the program's visibility. So for the first theme, program timing, for example, we can see volunteers and facilitator suggested starting later, maybe around 9:30-ish, 10, while parents recommended offering, afternoon programs, as some of their babies often fall asleep during the drive. For the second theme, more interactive activities and interactions, parents suggested adding story times and also, involving more tenants, while residents and tenants mentioned, incorporating educational toys and also using name tags for easier identification. Lastly, to increase program visibility, as we can see over here, volunteer and facilitator mentioned, they recommended having more advertisements, such as having like a video promoting the intergenerational program. Next slide. Satisfaction. So for this, all the parents, respondents liked the intergenerational early on program and, enjoying the interaction between older and younger generations. They really appreciated the layout. They mentioned about the time for playing, socializing, circle time that they really enjoyed. For example, as we can see over here, one of the parents noted, how they loved mixing their daughter with older generations as it was teaching and opening the world for her. Next, for residents and tenants, 20 of them indicated that they really liked the early on program. They really enjoyed the interactions, with such comments such as it was bringing their childhood memory back and how they loved kid and how they loved playing with them. And one of them also mentioned how they loved the idea of bringing two generations together and how important it is for the future. Next slide. So before I go towards my discussion and my conclusion, I want to mention about the recommendations for program improvement. This is something what we found over our analysis and something that was mentioned for most of the participants. So the first one being name tags for easier communication between parents, residents, and the kids. One of the resident mentioned maybe having name tags behind at the back, so then it's easier to communicate with the kids and also the parents. The second thing was the emphasis on cleanliness and safety, which I mentioned previously, how some of the kids were climbing on the wheelchair, which was raising some safety concern. And in terms of cleanliness, we did have a question on our survey about reservations for parents. And they did mention that, their reservation about, how they were scared of getting COVID-19 or, flu or, any other thing, diarrhea. So that's the thing that we found. The third thing, having conversation with parents about expectations. So this is something what we found. So as we saw that previously in our slides, where one of the parents mentioned that it did not meet their expectations because they felt like that residents and tenants were not really fully interacting with their kids. So maybe having more educational expectation talks about some of the age-related, challenges faced by older adults would be also helpful. The fourth thing is options for afternoon programs or activities later in the program, later in the morning, as we heard from volunteers, facilitators, but also parents. The next one is increased advertisement to enhance the visibility of the program. That was mentioned and recommended by volunteers and facilitators. And I do want to mention that we do actually have an intergenerational video that's now posted online. So that is something that we can go forward with. And lastly, I wanted to mention some additional accommodations for older adults. Although I do recognize that we did have personal support workers, we had volunteers, facilitators to accommodate older adults, but additional accommodations for older adults, such as like a pocket talker, having name tags, and also having an easy to read books with large print, so then it's easier for older adults to read the book during story time. Next slide. So intergenerational programs hold the potential to enhance understanding across generation and foster a deeper sense of community within long-term care homes. By bringing generations together from different age groups, these programs can create opportunities for meaningful interactions and mutual learning, therefore strengthening community bonds, as we saw from comments from residents about how wonderful it was to see kids around expressing how it was bringing their own childhood experiences back, but also from volunteers and facilitators highlighting the positive impact of these interactions. So therefore, intergenerational early on programs yields promising results. These findings may offer useful future guidance for expanding the intergenerational early on program to other existing long-term care homes. I'll now pass this on to
Thank you, Mehwish. So your research obviously informed a lot of our practices and continue to inform a lot of our practices in in our play groups. And it's very exciting because we are also exploring other opportunities, such as providing childcare within the Pearly Health facilities. And the reason we're doing that is because of all the benefits that we've talked about in this presentation. Children do have an ability to bring a smile to people's face, you know, even in the worst situations that, you know, people are finding themselves in, or and they do improve quality of life for older adults because they provide a sense of contribution, they provide a sense of hope and inspiration. It will continue to build opportunities for connections between two groups that very much live in the present and want to build a relationship and want to spend some time sitting and talking and doing things together. It will also create more volunteer opportunities for older adults at the Pearly. And of course, there's the recruitment and retention piece as well that will support employees at Pearly Health to have childcare in place at their workplace. And obviously, we will need to look at flexible childcare operating hours to accommodate the work and the shifts of the employees at the Pearly. We know that, you know, Pearly is an employee of choice, and that will only enhance that that status that they have to be able to have that accessibility of childcare right on site with flexible hours, and also such an easy thing for families to have one drop off and pick up at the same place as where you work. And of course, we're really excited to have research continuing through the community of excellence. And so one of the things that we were very excited about when we read the recommendations, we feel that those recommendations are going to be very easily implemented in a childcare center. So for example, if I take the recommendation of having name tags, so when it's an early on play group within the Pearly Health, it is a drop-in center, so it may not always be the same families and children, but having childcare in the facility will create daily interactions for both children and older adults to be together that will build you know, connections where they will know each other's name because of all the many interactions during the day. And we are seeing a vision of not just being co-located, but fully integrated, where, you know, both generations are having lunch together or participating in some of the recreational therapies together, or having the older adults being, you know, part of their weekly schedule is to come and spend story time with us. So quite excited about that piece. We are hoping to continue the early on project as well, but childcare is very exciting to be able to see that, because it's going to continue those opportunities and benefits for seniors and children. Next slide, please. So that is the future location at Pearly Health. There's lots of conversations going on between the two organizations to support things, as Mehwish talked about, ensuring that from a Ottawa Public Health standpoint, that we are both implementing the recommendations that we both have for the different demographics. Also ensuring that the space is accessible to both young children, safe to children and older adults. So very exciting project underway. And that's the end for us. If there's any questions, we'll pass it on to Cassandra.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Kathy, Jose, and Mehwish, for those wonderful presentations. So yeah, we'll move on to the question and answer period of the webinar now. So I see there's quite a few questions in the chat you're more than welcome to keep adding them in, and then we'll try to get through all those questions today. I'll start with the first one here. I see Mehwish already answered it in the chat, but perhaps we can share it with the rest of the group. So the question was, can you share what the difference is between tenant and resident? Is that long-term care versus independent living? So Mehwish, go ahead.
Yes. So you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Residents are basically, they're residing at Pearly Health, but they do they're under the long-term care homes. And while tenants are basically also residing at Pearly Health, but they're at the independent living area.
Okay, we'll jump into the next question here. So there's a question here about, are the intergenerational programs still happening at the Pearly? How can me and my little guy join in?
So I can certainly answer that one. Yes, they are still happening. We are still offering one weekly, I believe on Friday afternoons. And you can connect with the Early On Child and Family Center, Ottawa South, or I'm sure Cassandra can also provide that information as well in the chat.
Yeah, so it's on Friday mornings at 9:15 until 11:15. Yeah, perfect. Next question. Ooh, the hard-hitting question. When do you expect the Pearly Health Child Care Center to be opened?
That is a great question.
That is a very good question. We're just now finishing an integrated design stage. So we came up with the blueprints for the facility. We did several rounds of consultation with specialists in multi-purpose design, accessible design, as well as childcare specialists, older adult specialists, trying to come up with the best merged space we could, because the space has to meet all the licensing standards for childcare in Ontario and still have suitable spaces for intergenerational interactions. And once that's done, it'll go to tender. So we have something of a timeline, but no fixed date as of right now.
Perfect. Okay, next one here. It says, so with the drop-in sessions currently happening, if in long-term care there has been concerns related to the adult family members of the children being in the home without a vulnerable sector police check.
So I think, I mean, I can start by answering that, and then Mehwish, if you have any, if anything came out in the survey, you can also jump in as well. So we haven't heard concerns. We also, on our end, because children are also a vulnerable population, we also were, having some of the same kind of conversation around older adults. Would they need a vulnerable sector check when they're volunteering into our program? And those conversations are still ongoing. But I think what is really key and important to remember is that at no point would an older adult that's a parent or with the family of a young child be left with an older adult on their own, and vice versa. At no point would there be an older adult left alone with a child. So there's always a facilitator from the Early On in the room, and there's also someone from Pearly Health also in the room. So I don't know if Cassandra, I wish you wanted to add some more to that.
I think, yes, I definitely agree with you. We didn't have anything like that in our analysis. But again, that you mentioned that, yes, we do have volunteers, facilitators, personal support workers present all the time. So they're really not really alone with the kids. But yes.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Perfect. Okay, so next question here. Were there any exclusion criteria for participants that would inform future programs?
So I can answer that if you want, and then maybe you can add up. So I don't think we had any exclusion and inclusion criteria set for anybody, because we provide programming, so we are open to anyone who are interested in participating. Although I do want to mention that residents that had severe, cognitive impairment, behavior, or even like physical disabilities that might limit them from fully participating independently, then we do invite family members or friends to attend with the residents to further support their participations. I think we also definitely do have personal support worker present to support. But I think for any residents that might require like higher levels of support, then we do encourage them to have, like any additional companion among with their family or friends or caregivers. And I don't know if you want to add anything else, Cassandra.
No, yeah, that's exactly it. That's what's happening right now in the play group too. So whenever we have anyone that requires more needs than we are providing, then we invite them to bring in family members or anyone, a companion, to support them so they can participate. Yeah. All right. Next question. Are you still planning to have the drop-in early on program even after the child care center opens?
Well, we certainly hope that we can continue, because I think that there are two different types of families, right? So some families who need childcare and some families who may not need full-time childcare. I think that's a conversation that will be had between the early on and Pearly Health in terms of space, if space is available, if there's also a need as well, in terms of if many of the residents and the tenants are all participating in the childcare center. We'll have to look at it, definitely, but I don't think it's out of the question.
Next question, perhaps this might be for Kathy and Jose, if you have any. So do you have any anecdotal stories or favorite moments from this early on at Pearly? And perhaps Kathy might be able to speak to any of the facilitators if they shared any stories with you.
Yeah, so it's interesting. We had my one of the stories that I'm thinking of. We recently just had a switch in facilitator, and one of the facilitator that the facilitator that is now taking on that play group was quite hesitant because she wasn't. She hadn't had a lot of exposure to older adults, so she wasn't sure if she was the right person. And after the first play group, she came back and said, "This is lovely. Can we do play group there every day?" She just felt that there was such a great connection, and she really appreciated seeing how children and older adults just gravitated towards each other. There was no they just they were curious about each other. I think also one of the stories that I always I'm partial to story time, but when you see a toddler who's just learning to walk and wobbly and looking at an older adult and wanting that older adult to read that book and bypassing mom because they want that cuddle from an older adult would definitely be one of them. And I think it seems very small, but just when we hear families say, "Oh, I was going to go to this other play group, but my child woke up this morning and said that he wanted to go, see this person," and names the older adult by their name. So you can tell right away that there's some connections made there. I don't know if you had some.
Oh, it's definitely, it's those moments of recognition when the older adult comes in the room, sees the child, and there's that locking of the eyes. And, I remember you from last week or the week before. And even then, the further deepening of connections, sometimes even involving parents. I was at one of the play groups where a mom who used to work in emergency services and a gentleman who was a veteran were sharing experiences of similar things that they've been through and similar circumstances and places while the gentleman was rocking the baby, right? And so it's just those little moments that then lead to deepening connections with other people, which oftentimes you don't get a lot of as a young parent that's spending a lot of time at home with the child or an older adult in long-term care. You don't have a lot of people coming in from outside of your sphere necessarily to build connections with.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing, Kathy and Jose. So we'll go to the next one here. Oh, so we have two here from Don. So he made one comment saying, if I could see the world through the eyes of a child. And he followed up with a question, what do seniors learn from children?
I think a big part of it is laughing at the little things. And especially, childlike wonderment at things. Recently, we got a light table, which has a projector screen that projects down onto a tabletop. And for a lot of the children, never seen anything like that. And that's also a very recent piece of technology for the older adults. And so it's interesting to see how they both play off of each other in exploring the new pieces that are brought into the room.
I think if I can just add the comment the person just made is seeing the world through the eyes of a child is sometimes we forget to do that. And I think that when younger children are with older adults, you really get truly to see that when a child's curiosity and wonder is on display, you can't help but also see it that way where, you might have seen a bug, on the light table and it's not, it's just a bug. But then when they see how a child gets excited about the bug, it really kind of, it's being in the moment also, I think, is really a key piece of what they bring to older adults.
And I'd add, like, the one thing that I think is also super important is the sense of purpose that this gives to older adults, the opportunity to engage in activities also that are meaningful to them and that bring them a sense of purpose. So
amazing. Okay, next one here we have. So interesting presentation. Don't think I've seen anything like this in Ottawa. How many children will be allowed in the child care program or expected? I think this is something that would be good in hospitals as well.
So the child care program is licensed for between 49 and 63 children. It's designed to have one infant room with a maximum capacity of 10, a toddler room with a maximum capacity of 15, and a preschool room with a maximum capacity of 24. However, we are being flexible in design such that the toddler room could be converted into a preschool room and the infant room into a toddler room, depending on the ages of the children, of the staff, and the demand we're seeing.
Perfect. Right. Next question. So very nice presentation. My question is for Mehwish and Annie. What do you see as your next step in relation to the research that you did?
I can go first, and then Annie, if you want to take over. As I mentioned previously when I was concluding, the intergenerational early on program, it definitely yields promising results. And maybe, from our research and from our findings, it can definitely be useful for future guidance for expanding the intergenerational early on program to, let's say, any other existing long-term care homes. So in Ottawa, but it could be like any other places as well, like Toronto, or, and as well as like different hospitals as well with this research, because definitely it was a program evaluation. And if anyone is getting anything out of it, they can definitely, try to consider expanding this to other long-term care homes. Do you want to add anything else, Annie?
Hear me?
Yeah.
My earphones just died. I'd add that, the research piece, absolutely is also something that we plan on expanding on. This was an initial, evaluation of the program. We're really looking to continue to evaluate the program and look at, take measures before and see, what's the impact potentially on loneliness, what's the impact for the children. And so we're certainly also very excited as a Center of Excellence to see where we can build on our initial research.
Okay, so our next question, how do you think the child care program will impact the children and seniors? Do you expect same benefits as the early on program?
I actually think it's going to have even more benefits than the early on program. And that is because of the repeated daily interactions that will be happening. So doing a program once a week of 2 hours versus having children present in the building and interacting with seniors at different times of the day is actually going to have even more impacts. I think for the children, it will create awareness, because we know that many families today don't live necessarily close to their grandparents, so they may not be as familiar with older adults and all the expertise and the wonderful things that they have, and also maybe some of the limitations that they have. So I think, one of the things that it might create is a generation of children that are quite aware of how to create places and spaces that doesn't have ageism. And then, as Annie shared, for seniors, I think that sense of purpose, that sense of contribution, that there is somebody there waiting for me. They expect me to be there if I said that I was going to go and help with the garden or help with reading books. So I think that there's lots of benefits that we know are going to be there, and still some that we haven't yet discovered.
Okay, so next question, how many residents participate weekly? Do you have a cap?
Do you want me to answer that one, Cassandra, or do you want to answer that one?
I can answer that one. So what we try to do is we try to match with the number of children that attend that week. So our typical number, I would say, is max about 10 residents that are there, because we often don't see more than that many children at the same time. And I guess for the room size too, it gets a little much to have more than that many residents and young children in the room. So I would say on average, maybe between 6 and 10. Okay, our next one here. So do the residents POA have to provide consent for their loved one to participate if they could functionally attend, but are not at a point of being able to consent? Those living with dementia are my thought. I can answer that question as well. So what we do is, so the ones that are able to provide consent to participate, they're welcome to go. So we have it open to anyone, regardless if you have a cognitive impairment or not. A lot of the times, the residents that do have cognitive impairments, their family members are aware that they're participating and they encourage it as well. We also open it up to the RECE therapists and the PSWs to kind of figure out who would be appropriate to participate in the various activities on site here. So one of them being the intergenerational play group. So as long as there's a PSW there to support, then that's usually fine. Okay, next one. So question for Jose and Kathy. So you mentioned shared spaces and coordinating with people to ensure accessibility. What does that look like for children and older adults? I'd expect they have different needs. Do you have examples of consideration?
I can answer that one. So towards the first part, for the conversations we've had with experts in universal design, the big takeaway that we got was that the needs of children in the early years and of older adults in long-term care are very similar. We just tend to resolve them in different ways. And so what we're working on is finding solutions that are common. One example I can provide is tables. A lot of cases, the big standard square, rectangular, circular tables that are standard in the industry are very difficult to use for a small child in a high chair or for an older adult using a mobility aid. And so what we're looking at is doing smaller tables with cutouts so there's more space for them to be playing or interacting hand over hand and sitting more closely with, a good audible range for each other. And so it's about purposely designing a space that takes the needs of both groups into consideration and then finding furnishings and activities that are appropriate to both groups. Because that's what we want, is we don't want there to be a dedicated childcare space where the older adults feel uncomfortable and vice versa. We want it to feel like it's a natural home-like environment for both. And we've found in our spaces, when you provide a comfortable environment, that is the biggest social lubricant for these intergenerational interactions.
Great. Okay, next question. So I think these two go together. So has there had to been conversations about if a resident has passed away? And then a follow-up is, and how that is navigated with the child and parent if the child is hoping to see them?
Yeah, I can certainly take that question on. I think that one of the things that we know when working with children is that they are extremely resilient, and so they often ask a lot of questions, as we all know, that there's lots of whys. So we really look at the child's age in how we're going to answer our questions. It's going to be very different with an 18-month-old than a 3.5-year-old. But we have these conversations in childcare or in early on centers all the time, whether it's a family member, an older grandfriend, as we typically call them in our program, or sometimes it can be also a family pet. So we really focus on, we answer the question that the child will ask us, because sometimes as adults we try to provide a lot of information, so we really follow the child's lead, and we answer the questions that they ask. And often they'll ask a few questions. We'll explain that someone passed away, they're no longer with us, and they will ask where they went, and we'll share some information. But in a way, we are fortunate because the family is also part of the program at the early on, so the family can also support that family's belief in the afterlife. So it is a question that we anticipate. It is a question that we deal with in our early years programs and environment. And again, the important thing is that we focus on age appropriateness of that child's curiosity.
Yeah, if I may just add something in real quick. I think it's also very important not to address the passing of someone going first to the finality of it, but talking about the journey and the experiences had along the way, which is something that's very big in childcare, is the concept of documentation, right? Collecting photos and videos and art pieces and interesting little artifacts that tell a story about the learning that takes place. And so even if a grandfriend were to pass away, their presence is still felt in the center. They're still part of the history and the lore that's been built for the program. And that adds a very good, it's almost like a springboard for the natural questions that children are going to ask, right? It's important that we not sweep this under the rug or, draw a definitive box around it, but let that conversation come naturally. Why don't we see Jacques anymore?
That's great. Thank you, Kathy and Jose for that. So we're on to our last one here. So it's not actually a question, but it's sharing of information about an existing intergenerational program. So Phil is saying Maxwell Manor has offered an intergenerational program for over 30 years. We have matched local elementary student with seniors living in long-term care and seniors attending day program. The frequency of the visits are weekly, 45 minutes. We have engaged seniors and the student viewing the tabletop, example games, world travel, etc., which was most interesting. Great, thanks for sharing that, Phyllis. All right, so I would like to extend our sincere thanks to our presenters for this fabulous presentation, and thank you as well to all who attended today's webinar. We hope you enjoyed it. Please stay tuned for information on our upcoming webinars in the fall. In the meantime, if you'd like to learn more about the Center of Excellence, our current projects, or have ideas for upcoming webinars, please reach out and visit our website at www.pearlyhealth.ca/Center of Excellence. And just as a reminder, we would really appreciate if you can complete the short survey when you exit the webinar. Thank you, everyone.